Super. Hello, everybody. So yes, thank you, Andrew, for the introduction. We would like to invite you, to begin with, to play a game. So if everyone, it's entirely optional, but if you'd like to take your phones and scan the QR code, we'd like to invite you to discover your Explorer type. So there'll be 7 questions, but you may or may not answer all 7, depending on which path you take. But this was the game that signalled the beginning of our programme. So we thought, why not signal the beginning of the presentation today? So yeah, as I say, we'll give you a minute or so. There's a possible of 7 questions, but depending on the answers and the type of explorers that you all are, you might just answer a few. Is it working for everybody? That's the big question. So as you go through, you'll be landing on one of the Explorer types. So you'll find out, are you an around-the-world racer? Are you absolutely kind of that fast pace, intuition-led? Are you a polar explorer? Are you a great team player? Go back, no problem, there's a QR code. Are you action-orientated? Are you a great team player? Maybe you're the deep-sea diver. Are you kind of diving into the details? Do you like to know kind of that minutiae of what's going on? Or potentially you're the astronaut, that big picture thinker, that, looking at the whole picture, the horizon, that bird's eye view on things. So these explorer types, they gave us the foundation of, to kind of unlock the whole world of discovery, that whole game that we played with Lorna and the CFA Institute. And this is how we absolutely engaged our employees to discover who they were and motivate them to do something that we would like them to take part in. Did everyone find it? Just by show of hands, like, who's a polar explorer? We've got many polar, okay, so quite a few. I'm a polar explorer. Deep sea diver? Yes, there's a nice mix. Astronauts? And round the world races? Cool, okay, so it worked. That's also really nice to know.
So turning to who CFA Institute are, we are a global not-for-profit organisation that provides financial education to investment professionals. Some of you may have heard about the CFA charter holders. They have to go through 3 levels of examinations. It is reported to be one of the hardest set of exams in the world. And on the back of that, because our staff are the ones that are making these hardest exams in the world, they're purported to be exceptionally clever and very analytical in their approach. We'll come back to that claim later. So the Research and Advocacy and Standards Division was launching the Research and Policy Centre. And the platform was fundamentally a specialist area of the intranet that would house cutting-edge research. But it was being done in a very transformative way that would enable external members or external thought leaders to come together and actually provide or collaborate and have conversations and work to solve complex industry problems. So it was the most significant launch that CFA had undertaken in quite some time. And we needed to engage our employees with what it was and then ask for their help to actually test the platform before it went live. So what we were trying to do was make our staff aware of the platform and educate them on the what and the why. Then we had to ask for their help to robustly test them and set them up as beta testers. This wasn't just a cursory look, this was deep diving into the nuts and the bolts. The feedback would be critical to help the technical teams to make any changes or look at customer experience, see if any of the pages didn't work, and actually continue to refine this up until launch day. We needed to build excitement for the RPC to transform our internal audience into enthusiastic ambassadors. And we also knew that we'd have to start the campaign 6 months before the external launch. And we needed to keep that beta testing phase live for that period of time. So the ask would take a considerable amount of time and effort, and this was off the side of people's desks. And I was just going to, so if we go on to the next slide.
Yeah, okay. So it's a common challenge that you want to motivate people to engage with something that they perceive to be potentially a bit boring, a bit dry. So how do you do it? So gamification, absolutely. It activates these 3 core elements of our motivational system, so autonomy, and that is the absolute desire to kind of direct your own life, and games allow people to choose their own paths. Competency, so that's that desire to achieve, that feeling. So again, games allow people to experience progress towards mastery. And finally, relatedness, our human desire, that intrinsic desire to connect with other people. And absolutely, like games, you work with people, you work against people, and you create that shared community around a shared interest and understanding. So it gives people that kind of commonality. So gamification for us was extremely powerful in this. And that's obviously because there is like this intrinsic motivation. We're born playful, curious, inquisitive. That is just absolutely inherent within us. So we used that, and that's often in the absence of any specific reward. I invited you to scan the QR code. There was no prize, but you were curious. You wanted to know what you were. Sorry, there was no prize. I don't know if I said that to anybody. But it's that novelty, that challenge that we tapped into that really captured people's imagination and the spirit of the program, actually. So we created some challenges, and these challenges were tapping into this autonomy, this need to feel competent to achieve, and we tailored the challenges for each person, so it was a personalised itinerary. So for those people that were the astronauts, we were asking people to look at the RPC from a real big picture view, but we knew our deep sea divers would go right into the weeds and look at really the focus on the details, and you'll go on to find that's absolutely what happened, and people were able to do that for us.
So the main challenges, which the majority of you will not be surprised at all, are that our internal audience just were not engaged. The division that was looking after this was doing something on the internet. Nobody was too bothered about what they were actually doing. And while we were working on building the challenges, we were told that the platform was going to be changing, and it was going to be radical changes. Let me underscore the word radical. The external go-live date hadn't been set in stone, so we didn't know. We just knew that it was 6 months out, but we didn't know exactly when it was going to go live. And we therefore then decided that we had to set our own timeline and our key milestone dates, because if we didn't, what we were finding was that the technical team, they were not the least bit concerned with the internal launch dates or the internal engagement. They were focused on launching this externally. We weren't going to have access to the live platform we weren't going to have it for 3 days before we went live with our internal launch. So that was a bit of a challenge. And the technical team were working in isolation. So there was quite a few conversations along the lines of, we're not quite sure if that's going to be there, or we're not quite sure if we map you through something that we want you to follow in the treasure map is going to be there at all. And this was starting to become a bit of a challenge for us as we work through to develop and launch the program internally.
Yeah, so this is the challenge map you can see, and Lorna's right. Like we had to make that flexibility and that fluidity part of our strategy, because there was times where we would create a route map to answer one of these challenges, and that route map was gone. That site had changed literally overnight. So our challenges responded to those latest developments. And so had those pages changed, then that route map was gone. So we used that to our advantage. So as Lorna said, we had like a 6-month campaign. We had 4 challenges along those 6 months. But to keep interest high, to keep momentum, to keep energy, we actually played on the fact that it was a bit unpredictable. So we might throw out a spotlight challenge, and it kept people talking about it, engaged, thinking, oh, is there something else going to happen? There was a spotlight prize every now and then, just so that people were still thinking about it along that six-month period. So yeah, we used that intrigue, that kind of uncertainty to our advantage and just thought, do you know what, we can't change this, let's just embrace it. Because I think we've all been there. You can wait till it's perfect and set in stone to do something, but if you do that, sometimes you're either paralysed or you do nothing and then it's come and gone. So we thought in that 6 months, let's make this exciting and just embrace the unknown. And that's where, again, the explorer type, the archetypes, the characters really work to our advantage, because that's the nature of an explorer, right? Like, you don't know what you're going to find, what kind of terrain there is. So we just played into it and we made it a bit fun. And that's the whole point. It's like we were really passionate about making this fun and injecting fun into the workplace, because I can imagine, you know, most of us in here will play games in our spare time, you know, whether that's Wordle or something that taps into those 3 things that we showed you, those motivational. So why not do that in the workplace? Like, why not actually just bring some of that in? Because to Sage's point, let's meet people where they're at. And that's absolutely kind of what we tried to do in this campaign too.
So it's previously highlighted that we had to keep this level of engagement up for a period of 6 months, which is nigh on impossible when you start with a group of people that are just not engaged. So as we started to develop a regular cadence, we would set out the challenges, but we had to then look to engage in ways that could prolong that excitement. The animated GIFs that you can actually see, we basically gave them out like stickers that you get at the dentist. So when you completed a challenge, we gave them out, you know, you've completed this is great. But what actually happened on the back of that was that people then started to engage on our social media platforms, and they were supporting like-minded team members, or they were actually having a good bit of banter with others. So it helped engagement across the whole organisation, because what they were actually doing was, where did you get the signature on your email? Where did you get this? So that took off on its own and developed this organic kind of engagement, which we were hoping that it would actually do. So we would continue to see that the explorer types were forming their own kind of like leagues and tables and whatnot, and their whole engagement, which we really hoped for, but didn't know how far it was going to go. And then, as I said, people that hadn't been engaged really started to get engaged on the back of the collateral that we were then injecting across anything that we were doing. And the campaign was pulled into our regular cycle of activity. You know, whether it be a town hall, we would get the speaker to mention the campaign. It went out in the regular newsletters. We highlighted what explorer type was in front. We encouraged those that were just behind to get on board. And that's how we started to deepen the engagement levels across the company. So what you can actually see is how far the engagement levels actually went across the company. The picture you can see is one of our colleagues. She is slightly barking, and she doesn't mind me saying that to all of you today. She's the one that the yellow flippers are in front of, and you can guess what she'd identified as. So she took being a deep sea diver very seriously. She was going on holiday to get her PADI qualification. But what she did was, on holiday, she then sent back social feeds to encourage her team on a daily basis, basically highlighting, what she'd seen, the challenges she'd done. And it just went to another level completely, because it wasn't being pushed out by internal comms. It was being owned by our staff members. This is one of my favourite pictures that had come in. This little girl is the daughter of one of my colleagues who was off on maternity, and she's waiting for one of the challenges to go live. So she was completely invested, and her mum was very keen that they won one of the big prizes. But we were getting feedback like this on an ongoing basis, that people were engaging it, families were joining in, etc., and we were getting huge amounts of engagement.
So we've just put a bit of anecdotal evidence on there as well. These were just genuinely some pieces of the feedback. So not only were we asking for that practical feedback on the site, you know, the typos, the bugs, the errors before we went live, but this was the sort of thing that people were saying. So, you know, most excellent adventure, may the force be with you. It's cold, you know, it was so nice to see people really getting involved in it. It was just a fully immersive program, and interest, competitive spirit, joy. It was just a real high, and we felt like we'd really kindled that. So as a result, we had 1,000 pieces of actionable feedback that we would not have got otherwise, and that site may have launched with a bug or an error or a typo, which isn't great, you know, for the CFA Institute, because this was absolute a think and do tank. It was people coming together, these experts. So not only did we have that, but we'd created this kind of secondary benefit of this real advocacy and this excitement around the RPC internally, so that when it did launch, they were ambassadors and people were really, really proud, because to Lorna's point, people felt like they really owned it. They had something to do with that. You know, they'd made it how great it was. So, yeah, that was kind of the impact that we'd had and the sorts of feedback that we were getting, alongside, as I say, the more practical pieces as well. So I guess our question to you is how bold can you go? You know, let's just ponder on that today. The pieces that we have learned is around questioning the heritage and the anecdotal.
Yeah, I'd basically say, I don't know, across all of my career I've been told that something wouldn't work, or historically they have anecdotal evidence. Don't ever believe it. You look for the data, and if they can't give it to you, you try and you pilot and you test locally. So, you know, it's familiar to all of you, but you have to push that. I'd referenced earlier that we were told that our people were exceptionally clever, and they were deep analytical thinkers. Well, clever doesn't correlate with sensible, and we actually saw that we had a nice balance of people across the personality kind of like spectrum. So we managed to kind of like eradicate that anecdotal evidence on what they were asking me to do, looking after their internal communications.
And that sense of adventure. So we talked before, you know, everybody has things that are somewhat boring, you know, a little bit dry, a little bit dull, but we'd invite you to create that sense of adventure where you can. That's looking for that possibility. That's something we're really passionate about at H&H, and what we try and put into the campaigns as well. It's just injecting, as I say, that fun, like where can you find that joy at work? Even though you might look at this and think, oh gosh, how am I going to ask people to be excited about this? There is always a way. Certainly just as much as it can be immersive, like you've seen, and get people involved and bring it along with you, just to capture that interest and maintain that engagement throughout. So I would like to leave you with thinking about how can you create that sense of adventure in all you do.
With the Celebrate milestones, we did put on a couple of events that were special events to support this. And again, we had organic events that popped up. So we had an annual sports day that everybody then started wearing their Explorer type T-shirts, because they put themselves in the teams of explorers rather than their divisions. So we watched this take off. The other thing that I think was really powerful for us was pulling this standalone campaign into all of the other work that we were doing. So it was front and centre for a consistent amount of time. It didn't take over, but it had a part to play whenever the CEO was presenting on a town hall. So it was just to pull that into our regular activities. And that helped us maintain that high level of energy and that sense of community, which we found was much, much stronger when it could develop organically.
So yeah, adventure awaits. It's super cheesy, but like one small step for IC is one giant leap for the industry, is what my notes say, which is dead cheesy. But actually, throughout today, we were really keen to leave you with something to ponder, and it's where can you inject that adventure? Where can you create that sense of fun for people and joy? Because that's what it's all about. We spend a lot of time at work, so how can we make it as fun as it possibly can be? Gamification for us was that mechanism. So thank you very much.
Fantastic, thank you very much. Do we have any questions? Any questions from the audience here? Yes, hold on one second. Again, if I can ask you your name, your company, and then the question.
Hi, I'm still Anne Kerr, Travelport. Milestones, I guess I was just interested, I know you talked about the sports day, but have you got any other examples of how you did celebrate those milestones in a way that worked in different parts of the company?
Yeah, we had, whenever there was anything that had gone live, they'd done it in a kind of drip feed approach. We had maybe quizzes to make sure that people had engaged with the information. And then the director that looked after the division he'd come over to London. Our headquarters are actually in the States. And we established a global quiz, because one of the things that our company had been quite bad at was that they will do things and keep it for states within the time zone, etc. So we wanted to do something that would actually work across all of our offices, and having things like those quizzes. We even had Yammer, really silly. We would ask questions to find out if the audience had understood what we were doing and when we were doing it. So it was all of these little things. There was lots of cake involved as well. Whenever we did that, we actually have people that made, so we had the explorer types that we brought in and fed the team that was in the win cakes and things. So incredibly cheesy, but they actually liked it.
And any more questions? Are you going to be hanging around at lunchtime? As soon as you've gone, everyone's going to be thinking of questions. That's always the case.
Yeah.
In the meantime, thank you very much.
Thank you.
It was a fantastic session. Thank you.